What's going on, everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. MSI is releasing two new handhelds. Well, I gotta say that one of them's kind of a revamp, the other one is all new. In fact, at the time of making this video, one of them is up for pre-order right now on Amazon. I'll leave links in the description, but in this video, I wanted to see what kind of performance we can expect out of these upcoming handhelds from MSI. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have my hands on any of these new handhelds, but I do have a laptop that's actually been my main laptop since it's launched with the same exact chipset. It's basically the same configuration. Now, I will admit that MSI may have a few tricks up their sleeve to get better performance out of the new claws that are releasing, but at least we can kind of get an idea of what these things are going to do. Because after all, when it comes to this laptop versus the two new handhelds that MSI will be releasing, they're all using the new Intel Core Ultra 7 258V. This is a Lunar Lake chip, and I've had a lot of fun with this on the channel. We've taken a look at benchmarks. I've faced it off against the Z1 Extreme. I wanted to see what we could expect out of this, especially with these newer updated ARC drivers. And just to kind of give you an idea of the new handhelds they'll be releasing, the one that's up for pre-order right now on Amazon is the MSI Claw Ultra 7 258V. So it is a 7-inch display, and basically it's going to be the same as the first one. There are a few key differences here that we'll go over, but the next one, which isn't quite up for pre-order just yet, is the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. And this is the one that I'm most excited about. We've got a much bigger screen, bigger battery, but again, they are using the same exact CPU. So as for the MSI Claw 7 AI Plus, we've got that Intel Core Ultra 7 258V, and with this we get 8 cores, 8 threads, up to 4.8 GHz, 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X at 8,533 MHz. And one thing to keep in mind here is with these new Core Ultra Series 2 chips, that RAM is actually packaged on the CPU die. It's a bit of a newer configuration when it comes to Intel chips. But with this, we also get a 512 gigabyte 2280 M.2 SSD. This will be user replaceable. 120 Hz 7-inch 1080p IPS display that supports variable refresh rate, and it'll do up to 500 nits of brightness. Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, 53 watt-hour battery, and with this, they did add another USB 4 port, so we've got dual USB 4 on this new handheld. Moving over to the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, again, same CPU, so it's going to be the same configuration, still working with 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X. This one comes out of the box with a 1TB M.2, and with this, we get a 120 Hz 8-inch 1080p display. Supports variable refresh rate, 500 nits of brightness, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, dual USB 4, and this has an 80 watt-hour battery. So we've got a big battery here with this one when you compare it to the original. Same size as the ROG Ally X, and I think that kind of needs to be the go-to for a lot of these manufacturers in the future. Pricing has also been released between these two handhelds, and when it comes down to it, the MSI Claw 7 AI, $799 for that base configuration, and for the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, $899. So the price on these new handhelds definitely looks like it's kind of going to be up there. And before I ever pre-order anything, I like to do a little bit of research just to see what kind of performance I could expect out of whatever device I'm putting my money into. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this video. Just kind of give you an idea of what kind of performance we're seeing out of that new Core Ultra 7 258V. And like I mentioned, I faced this chip off against the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme, which is kind of the go-to right now. And this will just kind of give you an idea of synthetic performance up against that Z1 Extreme. Then we're going to move into some real-world gaming strictly on that 258V. But when it comes to Geekbench 6 at a 17-watt TDP, you can see that that Core Ultra 7 258V does come ahead in single core, but it is kind of lacking in multi, and that's kind of a given. These new Core Ultra Series 2 chips don't have any extra threads, so we've got an 8-core, 8-thread configuration, as opposed to the Z1 Extreme with those 8 cores and 16 threads. But as you can see, at a 25-watt TDP, that Core Ultra 7 does come ahead in single by quite a bit here, and just a bit in multi. Pretty impressive for what we've got here. Now we need to take a look at some GPU benchmarks, and for this, I just ran 3D Mark's Time Spy, 17-watt TDP, Ryzen Z1 Extreme, total score here, 2,705. On the Core Ultra 7, 3,209. Now in the past, with the first gen Core Ultra, we noticed that with these synthetic benchmarks, it did bench out higher than the Z1 Extreme, but when it came to real-world performance, it didn't perform as well. I mean, it was way under what that Radeon I GPU can do. But I also tested this at a 25 watt TDP, and now the Z1 Extreme is up to 3,221, but the Core Ultra broke 4,000 here with this benchmark, and seeing over 4,000 on an iGPU with Time Spy is actually really impressive. I'm sure in the future we're going to see much higher scores here, but 4,163, not too bad. Now I figured we'd test out some games on the 258V with the latest Intel Arc drivers, and up in the top left hand corner I do have Afterburner running. This CPU is running at a 32 watt TDP, and all of the games are going to be at 1080p. Soon as I can get my hands on one, we will be doing some testing at lower wattages, but I'm not exactly sure what MSI is going to be doing, to control that TDP. Most of these manufacturers do have set wattages and different performance profiles that we can use. Some of them send a little more over to the CPU, send a little more over to the GPU, so I figured we'd test this at 32 watts. On that Claw AI8 with an 80 watt hour battery, we can still get some great battery life, but if we're talking about the new MSI Claw 7 with this chip, that's only got a 53 watt hour battery, so keep that in mind. Next up, we've got Spider-Man Remastered at 1080 medium settings with XeSS set to balanced. This performance here looks really great on this chip. I was pretty surprised by this. And just to show you here that we are at medium and 1080, moving on down, you can see XeSS set to balanced. No frame generation going on or anything like that, and I'm seeing an average of around 89, but we do have that wattage kind of high if we were talking about handheld specs. So again, as soon as I can get my hands on one, I'll be able to kind of configure everything. We'll test it at those lower TDPs to see what kind of performance we're seeing. Next up, we've got Forza Horizon 5, 1080 medium, and XeSS is set to balanced. But I'll tell you, that Z1 Extreme will outpace this with this game. Even without using FSR on the 780M or the Z1 Extreme's iGPU, this gets around 22 to 28 more FPS than this Core Ultra 258V. I also wanted to run the built-in benchmark for Black Myth Wukong, and I'll tell you that performance has basically doubled with this game since it launched, and it really comes down to the new Intel Arc drivers. When we first tested this game out on the 258V, same exact settings that we're using here, we saw an average of 34 FPS, but now with these newer updates, we're up to 63. The final game I wanted to test here was God of War Ragnarok, and without frame generation at 1080 with the settings we're using right here, this has only given us an average of around 41. Now with a VRR display, you could definitely play it like that, but in order to get up here to that 60 mark or a little bit over, I did need to enable the built-in frame generation, and it's actually AMD FSR 3.1 frame generation. So if you don't like frame generation for some reason, you will have to drop this resolution way down. I'd say around 720p. We could probably reach over that 60 mark. Through my testing with the Intel Core Ultra 258V, I've been really impressed with the iGPU performance when you compare it to the first generation Core Ultra chips like the 155H. Of course, MSI did give us the overboost feature on the original MSI Claw, which did help out with performance. And who knows, I mean, out of the box with the newer claws, we might see better performance than we're seeing here out of this chipset. They might have some tricks up their sleeve, but the only way I can test right now without getting a unit in my hand is on this laptop, and it is using the same CPU configuration, the Intel Core Ultra 258V with 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X, and the new Intel Arc 140V iGPU with 8 Xe2 cores. Let me know in the comments below if you're thinking about picking up one of these new Claw AI devices from MSI, or is the price too high? Are you going to wait for something better? Stick with what you got. As soon as I get my hands on one, I will be making a lot of videos, lots of comparisons between the Z1 Extreme and something like the ROG Ally X, and we'll even face it off against the original MSI Claw with the Intel Core 155H. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you want to learn a little more about these upcoming MSI handhelds, I'll leave some links down below. And like always, thanks for watching.